when Sophia Chen breaks into Billionaire CEO Jackson Rivers' office to save her dying father. She never expected to become the weapon in a corporate war that would destroy everything she believed about love and justice. Welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight we bring you a tale where love is tested, secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and if this story touches your heart, like, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. The glass shattered across the marble floor like frozen tears, each fragment catching the dying Seattle sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sophia Chen stood frozen, her hand still extended from where she'd knocked over the Crystal Award, watching $30,000 of recognition scatter across Jackson Rivers' private office. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, dropping to her knees without thinking, her fingers trembling as she tried to gather the pieces. Blood bloomed across her palm where a shard bit deep. "Don't." His voice cut through her panic like a blade. "Lou, hurt yourself worse." She looked up into eyes that seemed to hold winter storms, piercing blue and impossibly cold. Jackson Rivers knelt beside her, his movements fluid and controlled, his expensive suit somehow immune to the chaos around them. This close, she could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker, more dangerous. "You're bleeding." His fingers brushed hers as he took the glass from her hand, and the contact sent electricity racing up her arm. The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Sophia's mind raced. She'd been running from the security guard who'd caught her in the restricted server room, the flash drive containing her father's medical bills and insurance, denials burning in her pocket like evidence of her desperation. She'd taken the marketing job as cover, never expecting to literally crash into the man whose company she was planning to expose. "I got lost," she said, which was technically true. "I'm new, Sophia Chen, marketing assistant." Something flickered across his features, gone too fast to read. He was studying her face like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, his gaze lingering on the scar along her left temple, a memento from the car accident that had started her family's spiral into medical debt. Jackson Rivers. He didn't let go of her hand. "And you're lying." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm not." "Your pupils are dilated. Your pulse is racing." His thumb pressed against her wrist, and she realized he was reading her like data. "You're terrified, but not of me. Of getting caught." The office door clicked shut behind them with finality. Margaret's voice echoed from somewhere in the corridor, calling security, searching for the girl who'd vanished from the tour. They were alone now, predator and prey, though Sophia wasn't sure which of them was which. "Everyone lies to me," Jackson said quietly, his voice carrying years of betrayal. "Business partners, board members, lovers. They all want something. Question is what you want, Sophia Chen, and whether you're brave enough to tell me the truth." She should have run, should have pulled away from his magnetic presence and disappeared into the maze of corridors. Instead, she found herself trapped in his gaze, seeing something broken beneath the corporate armor, something that recognized the desperation she was trying so hard to hide. "My father is dying," she whispered, the words torn from her throat. "Your company's insurance division denied his treatment." I needed to know why. Jackson's hand tightened on hers, and for a moment, his mask slipped completely. Raw pain flashed across his features, followed by something darker. Understanding. Recognition. "Then we need to talk," he said, pulling her to her feet. "Because, Sophia Chen, you've just walked into a war you don't understand. And I'm about to make you an offer that will either save your father or destroy us both." Jackson's private elevator descended in silence, carrying them away from the corporate floors to a level that didn't exist on any building directory. The walls were steel and shadow, lit by strips of cold blue light that made Sophia's skin look ghostly. She pressed her bandaged palm against her stomach, trying to calm the nausea that had nothing to do with the elevator's motion. "Sub-basement 3, Jackson said without looking at her. "This is where Rivers Technologies keeps its secrets." The doors opened onto a corridor that belonged in a different world. Gone were the glass walls and modern art. Here, exposed concrete, stretched into darkness, broken only by reinforced doors with biometric scanners. The air tasted of metal and electricity, charged with the hum of servers that never slept. What is this place? Sophia's voice echoed off the walls. Insurance Fraud Division. Jackson's smile was razor-sharp. Officially, we investigate false claims to protect our clients. Unofficially, we decide who lives and who dies based on profit margins. He pressed his palm to a scanner, and a door hissed open. Inside, walls of monitors displayed medical files, financial records, and something that made Sophia's blood turn to ice. Photographs of families. Her family. Her father in his hospital bed, her mother counting pills, herself walking into the Rivers building 3 days ago. We've been watching you since you applied for the job. Jackson moved to a central console, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. Sophia Chen, age 24, graduated summa cum laude with degrees in marketing and computer science. Parents David Chen, high school chemistry teacher diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And Maria Santos Chen, registered nurse working 3 jobs to pay medical bills. Word hit her like a physical blow. You know everything. No, your father has 6 weeks to live without the experimental treatment we denied. I know you've been teaching yourself to hack security systems using library computers. I know you broke into our servers tonight and copied files you don't understand. He turned to face her, and his eyes held depths she couldn't fathom. I don't know is why I'm about to help you. Help me? Sophia's laugh cracked. You're the one who's killing him? No. Jackson's voice dropped to something dangerous. And my business partner, David Kim, runs the insurance division. He's been systematically denying high-cost treatments to boost quarterly profits while I focused on the tech side. I found out 3 months ago. He touched the screen, and a new file opened. David Kim's face smiled from a corporate photo, but the documents below painted a different picture. Offshore accounts, hidden assets, medical reviews overturned for financial reasons. 47 people have died because of his policies. Your father will be 47 unless we stop him. Sophia's knees nearly buckled. Me this? Because I need proof, and you've already done half the work? Jackson stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. The files you copied contain the evidence, but they're encrypted. I can't access them without triggering security protocols that would alert David. So use me and throw me away when you're done. Bitterness laced her words. No. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing the scar at her temple with unexpected gentleness. I'm offering you partnership. Help me take down David, expose the fraud, and I'll make sure your father gets his treatment. Full medical coverage, experimental therapy, whatever he needs. The offer hung between them like a lifeline and a noose. Sophia could feel the heat of his body, smell the danger that clung to him like expensive cologne. This man could save her, father or destroy her completely, and she wasn't sure he knew which it would be. What's the catch? She whispered. Jackson's smile was sharp enough to cut. David Kim doesn't just run insurance fraud. He's been selling denied treatment lists. 2 pharmaceutical companies, letting them test drugs on desperate families who think they're getting compassionate use trials. He's been using patients as test subjects. The room spun around her. My father? The pills he's taking aren't pain medication. They're an experimental compound that could either cure him or kill him faster. David's been documenting the results. Sophia's vision blurred with rage. Her father, reduced to a lab rat. Her mother, unknowingly participating in her husband's potential murder. All for profit margins and stock prices. I'll help you, she said, her voice deadly calm. But I want more than treatment for my father. I want David Kim destroyed. Jackson's eyes gleamed with something between admiration and hunger. Careful what you wish for, Sophia. Destroying David means taking down half the board of directors, 3 pharmaceutical partnerships, and a network of corruption that reaches into Congress. Good. She stepped closer to him, close enough to see her reflection in his eyes. How do we start? We start with a lie. His hand trailed down to her throat, fingers resting against her pulse. Tomorrow morning, you're going to become my personal assistant. David will think I'm keeping you close because I'm attracted to you. He won't suspect you're the weapon I'm going to use to cut his throat." The elevator lurched back to life, carrying them toward the world above where everything would change. But as they rose through the floors, Sophia realized Jackson hadn't told her everything. The way he looked at her wasn't just strategic. The tremor in his fingers when he touched her wasn't just calculated. Jackson Rivers was playing a game with stakes she couldn't imagine, and she was about to become either his greatest ally or his final victim. 2 weeks of deception had taught Sophia that Jackson Rivers was 3 different men. There was the CEO who commanded boardrooms with surgical precision, the partner who trusted her with corporate secrets worth billions, and the man who watched her with hunger that had nothing to do with business. She was discovering which one was real when David Kim cornered her outside Jackson's office at midnight. "Working late again, Sophia?" David's voice carried the warmth of a snake in winter. Behind his wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes held calculation. That made her skin crawl. Jackson certainly keeps his new assistant busy. The building was empty except for security guards and the hum of servers processing the day's data. Sophia clutched the encrypted tablet closer to her chest, knowing it contained the final piece of evidence they needed to destroy him. Jackson was 3 floors down in the server room, creating a back door into the insurance division's files. "Just finishing some reports," she said, forcing her voice steady. "Mr. Rivers likes things thorough. I'm sure he does." David stepped closer, and she caught the scent of expensive whiskey on his breath. "Tell me, what exactly does Jackson have you working on? His projects have become quite secretive lately." Warning bells screamed in her head. David's casual pose couldn't hide the predatory gleam in his eyes. He knew something, suspected something. She was alone with him in a building where people disappeared into sub-basements and never asked questions. "Database management," she lied. "Organizing client files." Funny. David's smile was a blade. "Because according to our security logs, you've been accessing insurance division records, specifically medical denial files." The tablet felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in her hands. Inside were medical records, bribery receipts, and recorded phone calls of David laughing about families choosing between food and medication. Everything they needed to bury him. "I don't know what you mean, Sophia." David's voice dropped to something intimate and threatening. "I know exactly who you are, Sophia Chen, daughter of David Chen, pancreatic cancer patient. File number 47B in my experimental drug trial." The world tilted sideways. "What did you really think Jackson chose you randomly? That you stumbled into his office by accident?" David circled her like a shark tasting blood. "Jackson's been planning this for months. He needed someone with the right skills and the right motivation. Someone desperate enough to break federal laws for family." "You're lying." But even as she said it, pieces clicked into place. Jackson's lack of surprise when she'd confessed about her father. His immediate offer of help. The way he'd known exactly where to find the evidence they needed. Jackson Rivers doesn't believe in coincidence, sweetheart. You orchestrated everything. Your job application, your access to the servers, even your father's placement in my trial. Jackson needed a weapon to use against me, and you've been it all along. The tablet slipped from her numb fingers, clattering across the marble floor. David's words carved through her chest like surgical instruments, precise and devastating. "The beautiful part is that you did all the work for him. Every file you copied, every password you cracked, every law you broke, it all leads back to you. Jackson's hands stay clean while you take the fall for corporate espionage." Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Jackson appeared in the doorway. His suit rumpled from crawling through server rooms, his eyes taking in the scene with predatory awareness. "David?" His voice carried winter wind. "Working late? Just getting acquainted with your assistant?" David's smile was poisonous. We were discussing her family situation. Jackson's gaze flicked to Sophia, and she saw the exact moment he realized what David had told her. Pain flashed across his features, followed by something that might have been regret. Sophia, Jackson said carefully. "Whatever he told you, is it true?" Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "Did you orchestrate this? All of it?" Silence stretched between them, charged with betrayal and broken trust. Jackson's jaw worked like he was chewing words he couldn't swallow. Yes, he said finally. And no. What kind of answer is that? The kind you get when you're sleeping with the enemy. David's laugh was cruel music. Tell her, Jackson. Tell her about the surveillance photos, the psychological profile, the careful manipulation to make her fall for her target. Jackson's hands clenched into fists. David, stop. Tell her how you picked her because she was desperate enough to be controlled and smart enough to be useful. Tell her how you've been reporting every conversation, every kiss, every night she spent in your bed. Back to the board of directors. The words hit Sophia like physical blows. Every touch, every whispered confession, every moment she'd thought was real, dissected and documented for corporate consumption. You bastard, she whispered, but she wasn't sure which man she meant. The truth is, David continued, Jackson's been playing both sides. He needed evidence against me, but he also needed a scapegoat. Someone to blame when the investigation goes public. You've been both his weapon and his sacrifice. Jackson stepped forward, his face a mask of fury and desperation. Sophia, let me explain. She backed away from him, every instinct screaming, danger, don't come near me. The files on that tablet will destroy David, but they'll also put you in federal prison. For 10 years. Unless, of course, you disappear. Jackson's voice was raw with something that sounded like pain. I can make that happen. New identity. Clean papers. Your father's treatment paid for by an untraceable offshore account. In exchange for what? Your silence. Your disappearance. Your death, as far as the world is concerned. David clapped slowly, the sound echoing off marble walls. Beautiful, Jackson. Absolutely beautiful. Save the girl, destroy the evidence, and bury the truth all in one move. Sophia looked between the two men who had shaped her life into a weapon they could use against each other. Jackson, whose touch had felt like salvation and whose kiss had tasted like home. David, whose smile promised death, dressed as mercy. There's a third option, she said quietly, her mind racing through possibilities and betrayals. One neither of you considered. Both men turned to her with predatory attention. I keep the evidence. I disappear like Jackson suggested. But instead of staying silent, I go public with everything. Your corruption, David, and your manipulation. Jackson, I burn both your empires to the ground and let the world decide who the real monster is. Jackson's face went white. Sophia, you don't understand the forces you're playing with, no? Her voice cut through his protest like a blade. You don't understand what you've created? You wanted a weapon? Congratulations. You made one. She picked up the tablet and walked toward the elevator, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown timer. Behind her, she could feel both men calculating, planning, preparing to either save her or destroy her. The elevator doors opened like jaws, and she stepped inside. As they began to close, she saw Jackson take a step forward, his hand extended like he could pull her back from the precipice they'd all created together. Sophia, he said, and his voice carried everything he'd never told her. Ow. The doors shut between them with the finality of a coffin lid. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and dying dreams. Sophia sat beside her father's bed. Watching the experimental drugs David Kim had poisoned him with eat away at what little time they had left, the monitors beeped a steady countdown. To loss, each sound a nail in the coffin of her faith in justice. You look like your mother when she's plotting something dangerous, David Chen whispered, his voice paper-thin, but still carrying the warmth that had shaped her childhood. What are you planning, Mia? Sophia's fingers tightened around the encrypted tablet hidden in her purse. 3 days had passed since she'd walked away from Jackson and David, 3 days of sleepless nights and impossible choices. The evidence that could save her father sat inches away, but using it meant trusting the man who had weaponized her love. I'm going to fix this, Papa. She touched his hand, careful not to disturb the foreline that pumped experimental poison through his veins. I'm going to make the people who hurt you pay. And what will it cost you? The question hung in the antiseptic air like a benediction. Her father had always seen through her, even when she couldn't see through herself. He knew she was drowning, in choices that had no good answers. Everything, she admitted. then don't do it. His grip on her hand was surprisingly strong. I'm dying, Sophia. I've made peace with that. Don't let my death turn you into someone I wouldn't recognize. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with a message that made her blood freeze. Hotel Monaco, room 1247. Come alone. Your father has 6 hours. 6 hours. The experimental drug protocol included what David's files called cascade failure. If her father didn't receive the antidote within that window, the compound would trigger organ shutdown. Jackson had done his research. I have to go, she said, kissing her father's forehead. Sophia. His voice stopped her at the door. Whatever happens, remember that love isn't always a weakness. Sometimes it's the only thing strong enough to break us free. The Hotel Monaco sat in downtown Seattle like a monument to old money and older sins. Room 1247 was on the concierge level, accessible only by private elevator and protected by security that looked more military than hospitality. Jackson had chosen his fortress well. She found him standing at floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city he'd conquered and lost in the span of a single conversation. He'd shed his corporate armor for jeans and a black sweater that made him look younger, more vulnerable. It was a lie. Jackson Rivers was never vulnerable. You came, he'd said without turning around. You knew I would. She set her purse on the coffee table, the tablet inside it, like a loaded gun. 6 hours? That was a nice touch. David accelerated the protocol when he realized you disappeared with the evidence. Your father wasn't supposed to enter Cascade. Failure for another week. Jackson finally turned, and she saw that his perfect facade had cracked. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands shook with barely controlled tension. I'm sorry. For which part? Manipulating me, lying to me, or letting my father become a lab rat? All of it. He moved toward her, and she saw the exact moment. He forced himself to stop. But mostly for falling in love with you when I was supposed to be using you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Don't. I know you don't believe me. I know I've destroyed any chance of trust between us. But Sophia, what I feel for you is the only real thing in my life. His voice cracked like breaking ice. I would burn everything I've built to keep you safe. Then do it. She pulled out the tablet and set it on the table between them. Prove. It released the evidence. Destroy David and yourself. Save my father and 47 other families. Jackson stared at the device like it was a snake. If I do that, we both go to federal prison. David has enough evidence of your hacking too. Bury you for corporate espionage. The board will throw us both to the wolves to save the company, so we disappear. You said you could arrange new identities? Yes, but Sophia, we'd be running for the rest of our lives. No contact with your family, no chance to build anything real. Just survival in the shadows while other people suffer because we chose to save ourselves instead of fighting. She saw the trap he'd built, elegant and inescapable. Save her father and destroy themselves, or fight the system and watch him die. Every choice led to loss. Every path ended in betrayal. There's a third option, Jackson said quietly. Don, I should have offered from the beginning. He moved to a briefcase on the desk and opened it with fingers that trembled. Inside were documents, photographs, and a recording device that looked military grade. For the past 3 months, I've been building a case against not just David, but the entire network. Board members, pharmaceutical executives, government officials who have been paid to look the other way. His voice carried the weight of confession. I didn't just need evidence. I needed someone clean enough to present it. Someone with the moral authority to make the world listen. Sophia's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I manipulated you into this position, but not the way David told you. I needed a witness the public would believe. Someone who'd suffered because of the corruption but hadn't been tainted by it. Jackson's eyes met hers across the room. I needed a hero, Sophia. I needed you. And if I refuse, then I release everything myself, take full responsibility, and spend the rest of my life in federal prison. Your father gets the antidote either way, but the network survives. David gets replaced by someone just as corrupt, and 47 more families die next quarter. The hotel room felt like a courtroom where she was judge, jury, and executioner all at once. Outside, Seattle glittered with lights that promised futures she might never see. Depending on the choice she made in the next few minutes, Jackson pulled out a vial of clear liquid and set it beside the evidence. The antidote, synthesized from David's private lab, will save your father's life and give him at least 5 more years. In exchange for what? Your testimony? Your story? Willingness to stand in front of Congress and the world and tell them what happened here. Jackson's smile was sharp enough to cut. I'm offering you the chance to be the weapon that saves everyone, not just yourself. Sophia picked up the vial and watched the liquid catch the light like liquid diamonds. Salvation in molecular form. Purchased with the currency of courage she wasn't sure she possessed. If I do this, what happens to us? Jackson's face went carefully blank. There is no us. There can't be. I'll be in federal prison, and you'll be the whistleblower who brought down a billion-dollar conspiracy. The world will see any relationship between us as contamination of your testimony. So I save everyone and lose everything. Yes. His voice broke on the word. Just like I planned from the beginning. The confession hung between them like a blade. Jackson had orchestrated not just her recruitment, but her heartbreak. He'd calculated the exact emotional cost required to transform her into the perfect witness. And he'd paid it with their love. You bastard, she whispered. But there was no heat in it. Only the cold recognition of a strategy so perfect it had destroyed them both. Yes, he agreed. I am. Sophia looked at the vial in her hand, the evidence on the table, and the man who had saved her father by destroying her heart. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. It never had been. When do we start? She asked. Jackson's smile was beautiful, and terrible as a funeral pyre. Now, we start now, and we don't stop until we've burned it all down. 6 months later, Sophia stood before the Senate Judiciary Committee as cameras captured every word that would dismantle an empire. The hearing room was packed with reporters, families of victims, and lawyers who smelled blood in the water. Wore a simple black suit that made her look like justice personified. And in her hand, she held the testimony that would rewrite corporate law. Senator Morrison, she said into the microphone, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. David Kim's pharmaceutical trials resulted in the deaths of 47 patients who believed they were receiving compassionate care. Instead, they were test subjects for compounds that had never been approved for human use. In the gallery, her father sat beside her mother, alive and healthy thanks to the antidote that had bought her soul. David Chen looked 10 years younger, his color restored, his eyes bright with the kind of hope that came from surviving hell. He'd never know the full price his daughter had paid for his resurrection. And what was Mr. Jackson Rivers' role in these trials? Senator Morrison leaned forward, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. This was the moment that had haunted her dreams for months, the moment when she would either save Jackson or destroy him with the truth. Behind the cameras and congressional theater, she could feel him watching from the federal detention center, where he'd been held since his arrest. They hadn't spoken since the night he'd given her the antidote and walked into FBI custody with his hands raised in surrender. Mr. Rivers discovered the trials 3 months before his arrest. He attempted to stop them through internal channels, but the corruption extended too high in the corporate structure. When those efforts failed, he chose to expose the conspiracy through me. By manipulating your emotional investment in your father's case, the question was a blade designed to cut them both. If she said yes, Jackson became a monster who'd exploited grief for corporate gain. If she said no, she became a co-conspirator who'd helped orchestrate the exposure. Senator Morrison, Sophia said carefully, Jackson Rivers saved my father's life and gave me the tools to save 47 other families. Whether his methods were ethical is for this committee to determine. What I can tell you is that without his actions, David Kim would still be conducting illegal human experiments, and my father would be dead. In the gallery, she saw reporters scribbling notes that would become tomorrow's headlines. Hero or manipulator? Love story or corporate conspiracy? The narratives were already writing themselves around the truth she was trying to protect. Miss Chen, Senator Walsh interrupted. Did you have a romantic relationship with Mr. Rivers during this period? The courtroom held its breath. This was the question that could destroy everything, the personal detail that would contaminate the political victory they'd fought to achieve. I believed I did, Sophia said, and heard the collective intake of breath from the gallery. I now understand that what I interpreted as romantic interest was part of a larger strategy to ensure my cooperation. It was a lie wrapped in truth, designed to protect both their reputations and her testimony's impact. Jackson had coached her through this moment during their final phone call before his arrest, his voice steady as he'd helped her rehearse the words that would save the world and damn their love. However, she continued, My personal feelings about Mr. Rivers don't change the validity of the evidence or the necessity of the actions we took. 47 people died because of corporate greed disguised as medical research. That fact exists independent of any manipulation or emotional compromise. Senator Morrison nodded with the satisfaction of a hunter who'd cornered his prey. Thank you, Miss Chen. Your testimony has been invaluable. The hearing ended with the mechanical precision of justice delayed but not denied. David Kim would face federal charges for murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The pharmaceutical companies would pay billions in settlements. The insurance division would be dissolved, its practices investigated by a special prosecutor. And Jackson Rivers would serve 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. His sentence reduced in exchange for his cooperation and the evidence he'd provided. Sophia walked out of the Senate building into D.C. sunshine that felt like absolution. Her phone buzzed with interview requests, book deals, and speaking engagements. The world wanted to canonize her as the whistleblower who'd brought down corporate evil, but all she felt was empty. Sophia.
Ow.
The voice made her turn, heart hammering with impossible hope. But it wasn't Jackson. It was his lawyer, Alina Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman who'd negotiated his plea deal with the precision of a surgeon. He wanted me to give you this. Alina handed her a sealed envelope. He said not to open it until after the sentencing. The envelope felt like it weighed nothing and everything.
Ow.
Sophia slipped it into her purse beside the burner phone Jackson had given her months ago, the one that had never rung. 3 days later, Judge Catherine Williams sentenced Jackson Rivers to 5 years in federal prison, eligible for parole and 30 months with good behavior. Sophia watched from the gallery as he stood to receive his judgment, his shoulders straight and his head held high. He didn't look at her, but she felt his awareness of her presence like heat against her skin. That night, alone in her Arlington hotel room, she finally opened his letter. Sophia, by the time you read this, it will be over. The hearings, the sentencing, the media circus that turned our lives into performance art. I want you to know that every choice I made, every manipulation I orchestrated, every lie I told, was designed to give you the power to save the people. Who needed saving? I also want you to know that falling in love with you was never part of the plan. You asked me once if there was a real Jackson Rivers beneath the corporate mask. The answer is yes, and he belongs entirely to you. The man who touched your scars and whispered your name in the dark. The man who would have burned the world to keep you safe. That man is real, and he loves you with a purity that exists separate from the games we played and the roles we performed. I've arranged for your father's continued medical care through an untraceable trust fund. Your mother will receive a settlement from Rivers Technologies that will ensure neither of you ever worry about money again. It's not an apology for what I put you through. It's an acknowledgement that love requires sacrifice, and you've sacrificed enough. Don't visit me. Don't write to me. Don't let the world connect us in ways that could damage what you've built. You're going to change corporate law, save lives, and become the kind of hero the world desperately needs. I won't let my love for you diminish that legacy. But Sophia, when you lie awake at night and wonder if any of it was real, remember this. I chose prison over escape because staying in your world, even locked away from you, was worth more than freedom without you. In 30 months, I'll be released. If you still believe there's a man worth saving beneath the monster I became, you'll find me at the coffee shop where we had our first real conversation, the one where you told me your father taught you that love isn't a weakness. If you don't come, I'll understand. If you do, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that the man you fell in love with was the truest version of myself. Either way, you saved me long before I saved you. Forever yours. Jackson Sophia read the letter 3 times before she understood what he was really saying. He'd given her 30 months to decide whether their love was worth rebuilding from the ashes of everything they destroyed. 30 months to heal from the trauma of being weaponized. 30 months to build a life that belonged entirely to her. 30 months to determine if she could love a man who'd saved her father by breaking her heart. She folded the letter and placed it in the hotel safe beside the burner phone. In 30 months, she would make her choice. But tonight, she had work to do, families to help, lives to save, legacy to build from the wreckage of corporate corruption. Tonight, she was exactly who Jackson Rivers had always seen her to be, a hero strong enough to bear the weight of other people's hopes. And in 30 months, she would discover if she was also strong enough to forgive the man who'd made her into one. The end.